Hello everyone, this is Shiny Noctales, and tonight, or rather this late afternoon, I want to do a video regarding a fifth haplogroup that I have mentioned in my other videos regarding Native American Indians from the tip of Alaska to the bottom of Chile. But I haven't because this haplogroup is more so, it's not as widespread as the other four, which I mentioned being A, which is predominantly connected to Native American Indians coming from the north of Alaska, and this would be related to the Athapaskans. And then there's haplogroup B, which I believe are connected to the temple builders. When I mean temple builders, I think of like the Mayans, the Incas, um, and these groups. And to me, they're also connected to the Polynesians, that had come from. Because when you look at the maternal haplogroup of haplogroup B, highest concentration is actually in Hawaii, which is interesting to say the least. Then you have haplogroup C, which I believe are connected to the Tungzak people, and these are people kind of in the northeastern part of I think China, close to Manchuria and that area. And I think they might also be somewhat related to the Jurchens that had a role to play in the Qing dynasty of China. But when I think of haplogroup C, I think of like kind of like the rat tail, kind of like when you see certain Native American Indians wearing their hair kind of in like a rat tail kind of a shape. And then the last major haplogroup I mentioned was haplogroup D, which I believe are related to the Japanese Jomon and also to other East Asian groups. And that was the haplogroup actually that my father um, was descended from his matrilineal lineage as far as Native American Indians are concerned was predominantly through haplogroup D, which would again be the indigenous Japanese Jomon, who also I believe were temple builders in their own right, or temple builders in the sense that they were somehow connected to ancient Egypt. If you go back through the Y-DNA lineage of D and E, going back 70,000 years ago, which they could have intersected with the Polynesians, and they could have kind of had a kind of a mix, which would be B and D, and you can kind of see that readily in South America, especially. But anyways, for the sake of this video, I want to mention a fifth haplogroup because I know there are some people who talk about the Native American Indians being the lost tribes of Israel and things of this nature. Now, we do know that, as I mentioned before, there is definitely a connection to at least I believe, to the ancient Egyptians. And, well, it would go back to what I watched a YouTuber called Debbie Solaris, and she probably would say, they are both the descendants of Atlantis. This is probably what she would say. Um, but and they do say that the indigenous Inca and pre-Inca and the ancient Egyptians may have been connected to Atlantis. But the fifth haplogroup X, is actually connected to, well, this might have a connection to Atlantis as well in a way. But this one is, you know, I think people kind of overlook this one because it's not as widespread as the other four. But nonetheless, this one is it has a lot of meaning. Well, I mean, of course it does, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think people are quick to say, oh, the Native American Indians, some of them, they must have a connection to Israel, or when they mean Israel, they're probably specifically mentioning Ashkelon, that'd be I believe, the ancient name of it, Syria, these places. But the reality is that haplogroup X has actually an older origin elsewhere, and it's not in Syria or Israel or Ashkelon. It's actually actually the oldest samples of haplogroup X was actually found in northwestern Anatolia, so that would be modern day Turkey, and Thessaly, Greece. Now, why are these two samples so important? Northwestern Anatolia and Thessaly, Greece? Because it really corresponds to the Trojan War. It corresponds to the Trojans and the Akkadian Greeks. The Akkadian Greeks, which were more so at the time in the mainland of Greece, or what we now know as modern Greece, and then the Trojans, which were part of the other part of the ancient Greek world, which was at that time northwestern Anatolia, um, modern day Turkey, but at the time was northwestern Anatolia, and it would have been around the ancient world of Ionia. And so I'm going to see if I can find these oldest samples here because you can see, and I'm actually connected to these two samples matrilineally as well. It's a wee percentage, but it's there. So you can see here the oldest samples of haplogroup X is identified to date are X2D2, X2M, and an X2M2 is part of the 26 early Neolithic genome sequenced by the Barson site. And this would have been around 8,000 years ago, northwestern Anatolia, so that would correspond to the ancient city of Troy. Because I believe the modern day city would be called Hess Arlik or something like that, but the original name would have been Troy. And then an early Neolithic X2B from Thessaly in Greece. And why is this one in Greece also important? Because I'm going to see if I can pull it up. It's because the oldest man-made structure, or at least where people lived in, or at least recorded history where people lived in, many as far back as around 130,000 years ago, was in Theopetra cave, and this was in Thessaly, central Greece. They say it's the oldest human construction on Earth, and so you know. I think it's important to kind of mention this because I think it helps kind of shift the narrative of the origin point being in Ashkelon, Israel and Syria, and pretty much that part of the world. And it really shifts it more towards really the other part of the classical world, as Irish professor Pat Flannery would mention, which would be really the ancient world of Greece. Um, so here, let me see if I can read this. Theopetra Cave, located 130,000 years ago. According to archaeologists, evidence of human habitation in the cave can be traced without interruption from the Middle Paleolithic to the end of the Neolithic period. The Theopetra Cave is located at the foot of a 100-meter tall limestone cliff, which looms over Theopetra village. The Lythos River, a tributary of the Pinels River, flows nearby. Geologists say that the limestone hill was formed between 137 and 65 million years ago during the Upper Cretaceous geological period. So that would have been around the age of at least recorded history of the age of the dinosaurs, or as well as other creatures at the time. Archaeological evidence now indicates that humans occupied the cave during the Middle Paleolithic period, or 130,000 years ago. Theopetra Cave has been described as being roughly quadrilateral in shape, with small niches on its periphery. Covers an area of about 500 square meters. This cave has a large entrance which allows a good deal of light to enter into the cave. It has been claimed that this is the oldest known man-made structure in Greece and possibly the world. And it was meant to protect people from the cold. Seems. Footprints imprinted onto the cave's soft earthen floor. One of the most important finds inside the Petra cave was the remains of an 18-year-old girl who lived in Greece 7,000 years ago. She was given the name of Avgi Dawn. To bring Greeks face to face with their ancestors. Athens. Okay. And there was recently kind of a storm cloud in Athens that was brought by the Sahara Desert that kind of gave Athens kind of an orange shroud. And I'll see if I can pull that up. Um, yeah, and there's probably a reason why. Um, kind of reminder of kind of ancient knowledge coming back to the surface. But no, like this is important to mention because again, this really does like it does kind of shift the narrative because I think that I watched this YouTuber named Hyopatia Lee, and she is of Cherokee, Mayan, Hawaiian, even a wee bit of Irish, but also of Lakota descent. And I remember in her video she mentioned about the specifically about what people say about the lost tribes of Israel and there being no correlation or at least well I don't know well I'll try to see, I'll have to see exactly what she said, but I think what she's really saying is you know for her it's there's a different origin point than what most people believe to say is Israel because again the origin point, as you can see here, wasn't in that part of the world. It was actually really part of the ancient Greek world. And this corresponds to the story, and I have to see if it was a Hopi story or a Lakota story. But there was an origin story where they said when there was a world, when there was a city that a civilization that fell into the ocean, there were four groups of people, and they said they were black, white, orange, and red, and they went in four different directions. I'll have to see if that's only because I'm sure it's a Hopi story, but I'm not sure if it's also Lakota. I'll have to see. I do know Lakota elder David Swallow Jr. or Wawita Ahumuni. He did mention a similar story to the Hopi, I believe. Um, I'll have to see if it's the same story. Um, Let me look here. As you see with the Hopi for sure, you see the four different directions. And that's the four different parts of the medicine wheel. But I'm going to see if the same story also corresponds to the Lakota. Let me see. I'm sure there's some intersection between Hopi and Lakota as far as the story. I would imagine that would be the case. It says here, Wankatonka creates the first world directly beginning with rock, a world later destroyed by fire, and the one whose animals are listed as helpers and bringing up primordial mud from the deep waters after Wankatonka has destroyed the second world. Let's see. I think there's an intersection between the Hopi and Lakota story. From red, white, black, and yellow earth, he made. Okay, there is an intersection. Yeah, that's what I was. That's what I was thinking. Cause let's see here. Creating power then took many animals and birds from his great pipe bag and spread them across the earth from red, white, black, and yellow earth. He made. Okay, it's the same story. Hopi and Lakota. Okay, I wanted to make sure because I again, I know for a fact that it's the origin story of the Hopi, but I wanted to make sure if there was again that intersection. And well, if you look at the haplogroups here, you have the highest incidence of haplogroup X is observed in Greece, Macedonia, Romania, and among the Caucasus, notably among the Avars, Durgans, Armenians, Azir, North Ossetians, and Georgians, as well as at Orkney, Scotland, Catalonia, and Basque Country. And so, why, specifically for the Caucasus, why is the mention of the Avars and the other groups in the Caucasus, why is it so important? Because they are related to the Circassians, and the Circassians, so at least from what I've read, are an indigenous group of people from the Caucasus. Um, Here's an image of them. Just see if I can get a better image of the Circassians. So there's that link. Um, there's that link to um, I'm gonna try to see how I can bring it to the surface. There's that link to the Caucasus, or to the northern Caucasus, as an example with the Circassians. Um, but probably what happened, because it also says it's also widely seen in Greece as well. I'd imagine probably the origin of the, because when I think about, especially when people use the word Palladian as kind of a starseed, I think of the word of Pelasgians, and Pelasgians were the indigenous people of Greece. And they actually, at least from some sources, say they helped the Trojans during the Trojan War, which were also really also part of the ancient Greeks as well, despite what people want to say. Uh, you can see here Pulaski, Greek Sea People. These races, Annonian and Dorians. And remember, I told you, the Annonians, or Annonia, was really also um, where the ancient city of Miletus was from. And this was only around an hour or so south of Troy in western Anatolia. And Milaspan was kind of the forefather of the Miletians, the ones who had left Spain and went to Ireland, and these had become the Goidels, if you will, the Goidelic people, as Irish professor Pat Flannery likes to mention. And he specifically said that they had left Spain, but they were really connected to the ancient Greek world, really to Miletus, and that would have been connected to the Trojans during the Trojan War. And also, because I will see if I can pull up the article again regarding the, yeah, Trojans. So I think one of the allies of the Trojans were again Miletus. So there's that connection going all the way back to well, from Ireland to Spain, and then all the way back to the ancient Greek world. And as I mentioned in the previous video, I'm connected. At least what it says with the DNA matches, I'm heavily connected to the Aurelians. Actually, here, if you look, and maybe this is why they said something about uh, some of the some of the Native Americans having quote unquote Roman-like noses, because if you look at the mitochondrial DNA, well, here it says Central Rome, which would be X2b, but then you also see Proto-Aurelian Bronze Age 1447, which is X2M3. And this really corresponds to, I think, a one-for-one comparison with X2b really going back to, mitochondrially speaking, to Thessaly, Greece, and then X2M3 or X2M going to, and I'll see if I can pull this up. Um, yeah, X2M going back to northwestern Anatolia, which would be Troy. So really, there's that kind of intersection between um, mainland Greece, but also northwestern Anatolia, which really to me, it's the western part of ancient Greece and the eastern part of ancient Greece, because it was all originally part of the ancient Greek world. It was all sort of connected. And I'll see if I can pull up some matches, because again, I did a video recently about there's an argument between modern Greeks and Albanians, who are the real descendants of the ancient Greeks or the Trojans and all that. But if you look at, this sample that I was connected to, and this goes back 3,500 years ago, this goes back to Mycenaean, Magdalia, Achaean Greece. I'll see where Magdalia is on a map. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. I try my best. So Magdalia, let me look. Where would at least be? Um, Okay. Terans and Mycenae. Let's see, does it show it on a map? Okay, so there's Terans, or Terans. It almost sounds like Tyrconnell, but it's Terans. Okay, and that would be in the kind of on the southeastern part of the Greek mainland. Okay, and then there's Mycenae. Okay, right there. But if you look at the kind of the closest ancient samples of the connection to the ancient Greeks back then, during the times of the Trojan, even a few hundred years before the times of the Trojan War, a couple hundred years, the closest sample was not Akkadian Greeks, but it was actually the Aurelians, and these were the so-called well, a lot of the Albanians will say that they are the modern descendants of the Aurelians, and then they get upset when they look at the Spaniards and say, "Why do they have more Aurelian ancestry than we do? I thought we were the original ancestors." And what they don't understand, and this is what the Irish professor was mentioning, is that the sons of Meal had, they had left Spain, but they were originally part of the ancient Greek world, which would have been connected to, as I mentioned before, Miletus, which would be part of northwestern and or western Anatolia, close to where the ancient city of Troy was. And I'll see if I can pull this up because I think there's a lot of confusion of why aren't the modern day people as closely connected to the original people as, let's say, for example, people from Spain and Portugal. I don't just want to say it's just the Spanish, because the Portuguese, really Iberia, if you want to use that as another term. I'm going to see if I can pull this up. Okay, so you see where Troy is, kind of on the eastern part of the ancient Greek world, and Miletus would probably be. Um, I'm going to see if I can pull up an image of Miletus. Let's see here, just for those who want to learn. So Miletus would be okay. So really, it would probably would be on the closer to the southwestern parts of of the ancient Greek world, and this would be kind of a stone's throw away. Like if you wanted to go from Athens to Miletus, it would be closer, kind of on that perspective. So yeah, at least a few hours south of Troy, but it was still kind of connected to that part of the world. So so this is one reason why for example, when the modern Albanians and maybe even the modern Greeks, when they say, why do the Spanish, and so, also Portuguese, why do they have this connection to the ancient Greek world? And it's because our ancestors had come, um, and not all of them just, I imagine not all of them just went to Ireland. I'm sure some of the descendants of Meal, or those connected to Meal, had stayed in Spain, while others had gone to Ireland, and they had become the Gaels. And so there's that kind of connection between well, Ireland, and I guess you could also include Scotland and other parts of Britain, because I don't just want to say it was just only Ireland. You know, honestly, like for example, when I think of the Welsh, I think of the Thracians, which were also part of the if not ancient Greek world, at least ancient Balkan world. There was an intersection. Um, and so yes. And then also you see here, there are of course a connection to the Acadians, but really the closest group was the Aurelians. And this probably goes into why, some people say the Aurelians were kind of the quote unquote indigenous people of ancient Greece. Really, what I've done my research on is that the Aurelians, they probably came to that part of the world at around, well, to me, at least the paternal haplogroup might have come in around 3,700 years ago. But and I'll see if I can pull up more samples here real quick, and then we'll go because I know I'm getting a little bit sidetracked now. I just wanted to really kind of make all these comparisons because I think it's important to make this clear. Um, okay, so you see the Mannonian period. Well, this was transitioning slowly from the Mannonians to what we would now know as the Mycenaean Greeks. But even at that time, the Mannonians were still more connected to the Aurelians. Um, I'm gonna see there was an outlier sample I had got here, and this was further back in time. Yeah, 18, and this was definitely during the Mannonian period. And you can even see here at that time you don't see any connection to the Acadians, but you still do see a connection to the Aurelians, which would really kind of hone in that the Aurelians were really there before the Acadians were, and this might be another reason why there was that big battle between the Akkadian Greeks and the Aurelians during that would later correspond to the Trojan War. And at that time, they were connected to Aurelians, but also the Gauls, or as the Irish professor would say, the Godelic people. Or but it's really all connected. It's a blend. It's a blend. It's not just one group. It's a blend of different tribes. Gauls, Ostrogoths, Thuringians, and Thuringians were. If you've read history about Hermann Siegfried, that's Hermann's actually my uncle's name, and Siegfried, or Sigifredo, that's my dad's name, his dad's name. They led a rebellion against three Roman legions, around 2,000 years ago at Teutoburg Forest. And then not only do you have the wait, hopefully I didn't say Thuringians, Cherusci. My bad. These were the Cherusci. These weren't the Thuringians. The Thuringians were a separate group of people that lived in that inhabited the kind of some would say northern part of Germany, but really also Scandinavia. Later in history, they had migrated south when the Franks and Saxons were fighting each other. So yes, it's all kind of connected, and this would go back, almost 4,000 years ago. Okay, so going back to the Native American Indians, because again, this video, even though it was about Greece, about ancient Greece and Troy, I want to shift it back from the European kind of story of it to the back to the native story of it, because I want to make sure I connect all the dots as best as I can, as my uncle would say. Okay, or as he likes to say in summary. Um, but anyways, I'm gonna see if I can pull this up here. So you see here, apart from one, Spain, North African herders, X2, okay. Hungary as well. Um, okay, so let me go to okay. Okay, let me cover this before I mention the Native American Indians because, well, I promise I will get to it. I just I'm trying to connect all the loose ends or tie up all the loose ends so like the story kind of makes sense. As I mean it is also part of my lineage as well connected to it's part of my rainbow, or Alopecia Lee calls me a rainbow warrior, but let me tie these other loose ends first. Okay, so the only Eurasian ethnic group possessing relatively high percentage of haplogroup X are the Druzes of Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. Okay, and before anyone says lost tribes of Israel and these things like that, what I read is that the Druzes, and hopefully I'm pronouncing the name right, they are not of Jewish stock, as it were, or at least from what I've read. They are their own group of people. And they probably originated as well as with other groups from really um, going back to northwestern Anatolia and Thessaly, Greece. Um, And I'll see if I can get an image of them because they have their own beliefs from what I gather. You can see, of course, you see the flag there, but they are their own group of people. And I will see, it says here they believe in 5 divine messengers, Jesus, which would also be known as Yeshua, Muhammad, which would come from the Islamic faith, other minor prophets, including Plato, Socrates. Oh, there you go. So you got some Greek influence there. And Abi Tablib. In addition to belief in core principles such as rejection of other religions and maintenance, the Druze believe in reincarnation. Okay, well there you go. There's that connection between crossing the Nile or life after death, or at least in Greek myth it would be crossing I think it'd be the river Styx, I believe. Yes, yeah, which would be kind of a parallel to the crossing the Nile. Yes, separate the dead and the underworld from the living on the other side. Yes. Okay. So okay. So now that we kind of have that squared away, I want to mention. Okay. So it says here the X2A subclade is found among many indigenous Amerindian people from North America, notably among the Sioux, which would be the Lakota or the Lakota Dakota people. Of course, I believe there are 3 subgroups of the Sioux people. There are the Lakota, the Dakota, and the Nakota. I think there are 3 different groups. So, um, I can see Wowita. He's like, he's sharing it. But it's important because, well, you know, it's like, I think I try to tell people when people say, quote unquote, all European people are just quote unquote white people and there's no difference. I tend to say that's not the truth because Greeks have their have their own beliefs, and as well as Norwegians and Spaniards, and there's we're not just all carbon copies of each other, because if that was the case, then people would say, as my uncle Herman would say, or well, he wouldn't say it, but I would say then people would say, oh, everyone's a Mexican, or I don't know, you know, you know, I don't know why I would say that, but it's just like saying that, that there are different groups for a reason, but different groups is also how we connect the dots together, or connect the loose ends, as it were. And so yes, so the Lakota group, or the people of the plains of South Dakota, and I believe other parts of North Dakota, and I will see where. Okay, let me. No, it's important because it kind of covers this whole kind of landscape, if you will. Yes. Yeah, so North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, Oklahoma, Texas, and Colorado. Okay, so kind of a wide range, as it were. Okay. So, got one group down. So now we have the new Chalnut people. This one's interesting because to me, these people, I don't want to say that it's in a derogatory way, but I want to say I know Bjorn always said, my friend, like, or kind of extended brother, Bjorn from Norway, he's always like these people, you know. But anyways, the new Chal Newt people, I believe, are actually somewhat, I believe, are connected to the Miztec people of Mexico, and also to the kind of indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest. Well, of course, the new Chal Newt. So hopefully, I'm saying this right. They live on the Pacific Northwest coast in Canada, and you can kind of see, when I look at this elder, from this tribe, to me, she almost could pass for. I don't know why. I think maybe like a Mayan. or well, maybe it doesn't even have to be Mayan, and that's why again in Mexico, as La Carmencita would like to say, there are 68 different indigenous languages in Mexico, and I think it's important to respect, there are different groups of people, but again, when I look at her, um, she seems like she could pass for either what I would see as maybe potentially like a Mayan elder, but she could also be connected to the Miztecs as well. Kind of like as I would say again, an intersection. So for those who say, the Mexicans are not Native American Indians, that is not the case. Well, they are. It doesn't matter whether you have the blood quantum card or any of that, because again, there were as my uncle Herman would say, there different groups, different tribes made different choices, and just because in parts of Latin America they don't have the same tribal nation kind of system as they do in, for example, in the U.S. and Canada, it doesn't make them any less native. They are still, part of the story of, as I would say, from the tip of Alaska to the bottom of Chile. And as you can see, this tribe is actually from the Pacific Northwest, which is in Canada and parts of the U.S., which is close to where I live. Well, I live in North Idaho, but this would be like a few hours west. I actually had an old friend named Jess, and she would always say I was light and she was darkness, but and she would always like say that she thought I was messed up for embracing the darkness as well as the light. But for me, I wanted to help her kind of see the rainbow, and she would have been connected to I believe, to the Laxkibu people, and well, because I know she had mentioned Wolf Clan, and when I looked up, who were the people connected to the Wolf Clan in the Pacific Northwest, and the word Laxkibu, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, but this would be the tribe that she was probably connected to, which would also connect to not only well, of course, it would connect to the Jomon people of Japan, um, and these would be the indigenous people of Japan, but it would also be probably connected to the also to the Atosk people. The Atosk would have later have come from the north, from Siberia, and they had mixed with the Jomon to eventually make the Ainu. And so yes, this would have been kind of the story. Um, they did a sample kind of like mitochondrially of who were the who were the um, indigenous people of Peru connected to, and this would have been the Incas and even before Inca. And they did a mitochondrial study through the maternal lineage, and they were connected to the Ainu. Um, and the way I think about the Quechua is they probably had a mixture of the Jomon, or the indigenous people of Japan, and then as well as like I almost want to say Otosk as well, or at least Athapascan, where it eventually connected the Otosk and the Jomon, or as Michael Herman would say, the Polynesian island hopper, where the Jomon may have had some of their origins from, with those who were from further north. And so it became eventually a blend of Polynesian and Siberian, which would eventually make up the Jomon, and the Ainu and Athabascan and all that. All those lineages coming together, essentially. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. But yes, so, and again, I want to distribute the. I know it's. I know this is kind of silly, but I want to distribute the love evenly, because again, I know, and again, this is not any insult towards um, either to the Cherokee or Lakota, because again, I felt like for example, I actually have a walking stick that I ordered from eBay years ago, and it was kind of a stick made from one of the trees from I believe they call it the black. What do they call it? Uh, let's see if I can pull it up. I don't think it's the Black Plains. It's the what is it? Is it the Black Hills? Black Hills. That's what it is. So the Black Hills of South Dakota is where I got this walking stick, and I believe that I was given that stick for a reason, that walking stick. So, and I've even seen a video, and I'll see if I can link it of a Peruvian or Inca descendant and pre-Inca descendant, also connected to Jomon. That he actually went to the Navajo and Lakota nations, and he wanted to learn from the people there. And he found many similarities between his people and their people because again it's all connected. It's not as disjointed as people think. It actually, as I will mention here, the Navajo is another group that also carries this haplogroup X lineage. Um, yes, and also the Yakima, which I have a friend from Washington State that's actually met the Yakima before. The Yakima people. Yes. And again, I think it's important to distribute the the love evenly, or well, in the sense when I say this, I'm saying this because again, I always and again, it's not an insult to the Cherokee because again, my Uncle Herman spent over 40 years with them. And he'll specifically say Eastern Band because that's how particular they are, But again, when everyone says, I got a Cherokee grandmother, or I'm Cherokee, or you know, I, I I just want people to understand there's thousands of different native tribes alone in the Americas, tens of thousands probably, if you count from the tip of Alaska to the bottom of Chile. So, yes, and again, I've met some friends too that say they're part Apache. I think one said Nez Perce, and there was another tribe that was mentioned as well. But yes, there are all these different groups. I remember I can always one thing I noticed about the Apache, and even though through my ancestry it says I am connected to them to an extent, is that some of them have like an intense stare, and I always remember Joe's mom. He's one of my friends in Idaho, and I believe Joe's mom is probably of English and Apache descent, and I know she said she had an Apache grandmother. But one thing she would always say is, what's my name? She always was very direct, what's my name? And then I would eventually say it was Debbie. But yes, no, you can tell just from their eyes that they were, a fierce group of people. But at the same time, we also try to help them learn about love as well, because that's one thing I try to help my friend Joe with, because he would always kind of snicker and say, "Oh yeah, I'm part Korean. I'm not connected to those to the to this Jomon of Japan." And I'm like, you talk so highly, but you have to understand we're all connected to the rainbow, and he eventually admitted that. But you know, you kind of have to have a balance there. Uh, but yeah, no, I think it's important because again, I read that and I know the Comanche or I know the Apache and Mexicans they would fight each other, but also there was also the Comanche as well that would go through through the Southwest, and they were also another group to be reckoned with. But it's one of these things where at the end of the day, it's important to have that balance of not just saying. I know Herman always likes to say, my dog is, people want to say my dog is better than your dog, kind of a thing. But I think it's important to recognize the at least especially the native people equally. Like instead of saying, "Oh yeah, this Apache is native, but this Mexican isn't." So that's not how it should work. It should be no, these two people are indeed native. Doesn't matter whether it's the one is Apache or the other is the Mayan. They're both there's that intersection. So I think that's what people need to understand. Okay, so uh, I know that was a lot, but I wanted to mention that specifically because I even know like I have a Native American Mexican friend that he would say, talk about the tribes from the north, but what about us from Mexico? And I would say, well, the northwestern Pacific Northwestern tribes are connected to the people from Mexico, the Athapascans. And even some of the Pacific Northwest tribes, say that, and these would be like Tlingit, Haida, um, they would say that the Mexicans are just like us. They just walked further south. And again, this goes back to the Jomon. Okay. And okay, so I want to make this connection between Nul Chalnut people and Miztec. Okay. So how are these two people connected? Okay. So you see the word Nul Cha Nut meaning all along the mountains and sea. Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can pull up. So you see how the word new, it's the same. It's from the people of the Pacific Northwest. Then these would be from Vancouver Island off the coast of um, British Columbia and Washington State. These would be connected also to the Nanu Savi, people of the place of the rain, and these would be the Miztec people from Mexico. And yeah, it's important to make this connection because again, if people want to say, um, only the tribes from the U.S. and Canada, or Native American Indians, all you got to tell them is that, well, the Newell Newt are from the U.S. and Canada, and it's most likely that the origin, as Pacific Northwest Indians would say, that the Mexicans are just like us. They just walked further south. What it means is that probably descendants or people connected to the Newt people walked all the way down to Mexico, and they eventually became the Miztec people, or there was somehow a connection there. So yes, again, I want to make this very clear because again, there's always this fight about you know we're only going to let some people be native and then the others are not. Again, that's not how it works. Um, because again, like you go from the tip of Alaska to the bottom of Chile, and it's all part of the Americas. Okay, so want to make that abundantly clear. Okay. Um, and then there was an origin story also connected to the Haida and to the Miztec as well regarding like I'm gonna see if I can pull it up here. Let's see. So it says uh, so you see the original god and goddesses turned themselves into humans and worked on the universe's elements, building a cliff to live on above the water. This is the Miztec creation story. And how does it connect to Haida? The Haida are tribes from the Pacific Northwest. So it connects because there's a similar story as well, but instead of saying cliff, they use reef, which is almost kind of the same thing in a way. The story begins during a time where there was only water in the sky above. There was no earth, only a single reef that came out of the water. A reef is a chain of rocks close to the surface of the water or sticking out of it. All the great beings lived on top of the reef. So this would be so you see the reef with the Haida and then the cliff to live on above the water for the Miztec. So then you see the kind of that connection between both Miztec and Haida. And the Haida people have lived in British Columbia, Canada for at least some speculate over 12,000 years. So again, it pretty much debunks this kind of argument that because again, even when I looked at my samples that were connected to Native American Indians, and again, most of my Native American lineage would have come from my father's through some of my father's ancestors that weren't European or that were indigenous to these lands. Again, it connected back to the Jomon, and the Jomon, they actually had come from Hokkaido, Japan, and Hokkaido is is kind of the northern island of Japan. And the Jomon really they lived in all parts of Japan. It wasn't just Hokkaido. They also lived in, from Hokkaido to Okinawa. It was all, regardless of what they want to say. And even the modern Japanese, they still have the Jomon lineage. It's not just Yayoi or Yamato. So okay, and then there's also kind of the stories of the Haida and the Ainu kind of coming together, and they've done kind of cross intersections of both coming together. Okay. I just feel like it's important to bring this out because it's the truth, and I think people just have kind of been fed these I don't want to say lies, but just it's just important to see there's an intersection there, and to respect that intersection. Okay, okay, now I know my my because I'm still thinking about my friend Aaron, who's Native American Mexican, and he would say, "Oh yeah, the Miztecs they were connected to that to the Aztecs, but not all of the Miztecs were, because there's another group in Mexico called the Zapotecs or the Zapoteca, and also there's Tolteca, and there's as La Carancita says, there's at least 68 different native people in 68 different native people in Mexico, and even she always asks, if people think she's Asian, and one of her closest samples was actually with the Mayans, and she might actually be connected to the Tolteca people. Which again, there's a lot of different groups, and so we have to understand that there were probably groups that came from the north into the south, more than just Aztec, because the Miztec people, and I'll see if I can pull this up. Um, how long did the Miztec live in Mexico? Let me look. Okay, so they say the Miztec, they've lived in Mexico for over 3,500 years. Okay, so they've lived there for well before the Aztecs came. And the Miztecs, from what I think, is they came from, uh, they didn't come from the Uto Aztecan group, but rather they had come because the Uto Aztecan group would be these would be the Comanche. The Hopi were definitely there before, I think. Um, the Nahuatl, Payat, Pima, and Shoshone. But I think the Hopi were there. How long Hopi lived in Southwest? No, the Hopi were there definitely before, I think. Or at least I think so, but let's see here. 2,000 years ago. Okay. 500 BC before Common Era. Okay. So, okay. I'm trying to get all this information straight because again, it's you got all these different groups, and it takes some time, right? But okay. Um, So probably the Miztecs, I imagine they had come from the Pacific Northwest, so um, they probably went through the northwestern coastline as they were going down south. This was what I imagine. Um, and so we have the Miztecs, and then we also have the Zapotecs. Well, interesting. Okay. Again, there's all these different groups, and I I told you there's hundreds of thousands of different tribes, you know. Um, yeah, dominant group 500 before Common Era. And they say the see when I think about the Zapotecs, by the way, and this is maybe why there's this a bit of this friction between these two groups, Zapotecs and Miztecs. When I think of Zapotec, you know, it could be when I look at their kind of like some of their uh, pottery, if you will, or well, not even just pottery. These are kind of elaborate, kind of I guess sculptures would be one way to say it. When I look at the kind of symbolism and see you see the two dragons, you know, coming from both ends. Okay, so let me see. So when I think about the Zapotecs, and some say the Zapotecs were there before the Miztecs. And the Zapotecs were also known as people of the cloud. Okay, so let me see if I can get this information straight. So okay, so the Zapotecs were probably connected to the Jomon as well. Well, both groups were, I think. Yes. But I think the main difference between Miztec and Zapotec is the Miztec came from the north, and the Zapotecs probably came from. There's probably a connection to Japan still, Jomon. But I'm also thinking Polynesia and maybe even I don't know why I want to say Indonesia. Um, there's probably some connection towards the south as well. Yes. Yeah. So when you had the Miztec and Zapotec come together, it was really a merge of the north and the south. And of course, their shared root would be the Jomon because they were, in a way, both connected to them. Indigenous people of Japan. And then, of course, the Aztecs later came on, and then then there was a kind of a at some points a combined rebellion where the Miztecs and Zapotecs tried to fight the Aztecs, and and then maybe there were some Miztecs who went on the other side, and maybe this is why there was kind of this this friction, as it were. But really, it's all kind of connected. And when I think about the double dragon heads, it also makes me think of not only Mexico, but it also makes me think of Peru actually, because they have this kind of um, meeting of the dragons, you know, through the rainbow in Peru actually, and what I believe, and this is what the Hopi elder said, is that their people had come from Lake Titicaca or from Peru, and even there was actually a Japanese man who did a video regarding that the word Lake Titicaca, TT meaning father and Kaka meaning mother, in Japanese would be Chichi Haha, which is very similar, which Chichi means father and Haha means mother. And I believe in ancient Japanese, on old Japanese, I think to say father was tata or TT, or it was very similar, which probably corresponds to the Jomon connection. Um, yes, yeah, it would probably would be. I think it was either Tata or Titi. It was very close though. It was almost identical, one for one. And I'll see if I can. I'm gonna be posting a lot of videos here, aren't I? But anyways, again, I just felt like I needed to make that connection between North and South because it's important. Yeah. All right. Is that all I wanted to do for this video? Okay. We'll cover a little bit more before we finish here. It says haplogroup X1 and X3 are found mostly in the Levant, North Africa, and parts of southwestern Europe, which correspond fairly well to the distribution of Y haplogroup G2b. And I think G2b would be connected to Otzi. Let me make sure. Is that the case? No, G2A. Okay. So, I guess G2B was kind of an offshoot. Okay. Um, yeah. In contrast, only the X2 branch into haplogroup G2A are found among Europeans, Anatolians, Caucasians, and Altian Siberians. Uh, yes. So, and then you can kind of see how there was kind of like probably like a split, as probably the Lakota and Hopi would say, a split between X1A. Let me look here. Yeah, X2A, and well, yeah, X1A, X2A. Yeah, so really, and you see here, Druzes. See, split between this group and then the Sioux people. So they were originally one group, at least matrilineally, these two groups, or at least well, X1 and then X2. Okay. No. So that yeah. But actually, you can also see X2. So X2A is found between North Native American, also Ojibwe. So that probably would connect to Anishinaabe or Turtle Island, um, Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. Okay. North Africa, Kazakhstan, Morocco, Cadabria, Unitas culture, which would be connected to the Nebria disk, which would also connect to, some would say, Pleiadian starseed, or probably also a connection to Pelasgians. Yes. Yeah, and then let me see if I can get an image of the Pelasgians, just for. To me, they were probably somehow connected to the Mannonians to an extent. Kind of like a matrilineal kind of also of a connection. Um, yes. And I know some people when they think about Pleiadians, they kind of think of more of some people try to say they were more um, quote unquote they use the word Nordic looking, but to me I feel like the Pleiadians really probably came through the Pelasgians, which would have been from ancient Greece, and not all of them were blonde. Some of them were, but there were also ones with dark hair as well. It actually, my friend Athena, months ago, she helped me embrace my jet black hair because I believe in a past life I was born, I had blonde hair and blue eyes, and this lifetime I have jet black hair and um, kind of light brown amber eyes. But no, she was the one who really helped me embrace that part of me because really it also makes me think of Hector and Achilles, where Hector, at least in the film, he was kind of seen as this blonde-haired, blue-eyed kind of demigod, where Hector was more just seen as like as a mortal, having kind of some would say brown hair, but there are other photos of him having jet black hair and probably brown eyes. And Hector, even though he wasn't this so-called demigod compared to Achilles, he still fought with all of his might to defend his homeland. And so that's why I think that kind of making that balance that the Pelasgians, the Palladians, that really um, that they had jet black hair is kind of like the home base, if you will. It's kind of like the reminder of our ancient history that and it doesn't matter whether your hair is blonde or jet black because again I feel like they balance each other in a way, just kind of like the sun and the moon, or kind of like spring and winter. But what I'm saying is that just like how it's important to give all the native people of the Americas, whether it's Lakota or people from Mexico, Mayan, equal respect. I believe it's the same for, of course, the Acadians and the Aurelians, really. Yeah, and the Pelasgians would have been were one of the supporters of the Trojans during the Trojan War. Yeah, so making that balance or creating that balance is important. Yes. Okay. Just wanted to make that clear because I think it's as Athena would remind me, it's she would always say as you should. So I am doing that. Yeah, as you should. Okay. Um yes, and even though in the Trojan War Athena, she did fight, the Trojans because it was said in the story she was jealous because Aphrodite was chosen over her. Athena, she did eventually well, first off she got pissed off at some of the Akkadian Greeks because they were defiling one of her temples with her priestesses, and then she went after them. Yeah, and then but kind of get into vision that she probably felt bad that because it's been speculated that Athena was actually the patron goddess of Troy. I mean, of course, there's a connection to Athens because Athens was probably named after Athena, but um, you know, I'm gonna try. No, but it's important to bring this to the surface because um, yeah, because you have Aphrodite here, and she's often seen as having, at least in some images, of having blonde hair, blue eyes. And then you have, hold on, then you have Athena here. It's often seen, some photos having blonde hair, but I speculate Athena probably had brown hair. Yeah, brown hair. Okay. And some cases even dark hair too. But yes. Okay, so why is this all so important? I know people would say, oh, why does the hair color matter? I know even my dad's wife, Julie, would say that. Why make such a big deal about hair color? Okay, so uh, then of course there's also Apollo, who was on the side of the Trojans. When I think of Apollo, I also think of Lou. I know what he's gonna say. I know what John O'Sullivan's gonna say. He's gonna say, "Oh, Lou's not connected to Apollo, like we had." But I know what he's gonna say. The Dagobard. I know what he's gonna say, but no, I can see him. Yeah, no, I know what he's gonna say, but no, to me, the reason why I feel like Apollo and Lou are connected is because um, yeah, I'm gonna have to say John. Wait, I can see him in Laura. No, I'm gonna say John. Remember what the Irish professor said. The Meletians had come from had left from Spain, but they were connected to the ancient Greek world. They didn't just come from the surface. Come from the surface in Ireland. So give respect not only to Ireland, but also give respect um, to where some of the ancestors of Ireland had come from, because they didn't just sprout from the ground in Ireland. I'm sorry, but they came from different places. So they left Spain, and then they also were part of the ancient Greek world, which would have been Miletus. So yeah, I know you're the Dagda but there were more gods and goddesses than just the Dagda, you know. Or and then I also see the Morrigan as kind of like my spiritual mother in a way, which she would also be um, one of the other goddesses as well of Ireland. But no, but Lou, in my opinion, was probably in some ways connected to Apollo, or going back to the ancient Greek world. Okay, so okay, why is this all so important? Um, because and then of course we're going to bring in Ares, which is also in the Trojan side as well. And Ares and Athena, they they didn't always get along. They always, they they sometimes went at it, but well, yeah, that's it's just it's how it is. But okay, okay. It also makes me think of Final Fantasy 14. It makes me think of Aglaia, and I'll see if I can post this as well. Yes, or of the 12. Yes. Okay. Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is I'm gonna try to see how I can break it down. Um, hopefully this is not a sidetrack for you guys, but I'm just trying to. 'Cause I feel like we got all these different groups fighting each other, right? I'm trying to just show that we all ultimately come from the rainbow, or we ultimately come from the Spanish should be Arcoedius, but in ancient Greek it would be Iris, Edis, probably how you would say it. Yes, and then the Norse would have also had Bifrost, and so there's that connection there. But yes, no, and then connecting to the Native American Indians, we have the warriors of the rainbow, the rainbow warriors. And so I guess it's in conclusion, as my Uncle Herman would say, to bring this full circle, us coming back together, regardless of whether your ancestors were from the ancient Greek world, the ancient Native American world, or both worlds, is that we all ultimately come from the rainbow. And the source does connect back to, you know, Thessaly, Greece, and northwestern Anatolia, and even beyond. And this goes well before the Trojan War, and well before the fight between Acadians and Aurelians. This goes thousands upon thousands of years ago that we were and still are connected through the rainbow. So I just wanted to, to finish the video with that because I think that's a good place to stop. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned a lot from this video, and I'll be heading off for now. Hasta luego and slangful. Take care, guys. Bye for now.